My name is Claire, and for most of my life people thought I was living the dream. I had a steady marriage, a caring husband, and a home that looked like something pulled from a magazine. For a while, that picture felt real. Mark, my husband, was dependable and kind. He worked hard, provided for us, and rarely lost his patience. He did all the things people say a good man should. But somewhere along the line, something inside me grew quiet. What once felt alive between us slowly turned into routine. He wasn't unkind, just tired, distracted, pulled away by long hours at work. I often felt invisible beside him, convincing myself this was just marriage, that maybe the spark wasn't meant to last forever. Then Aaron came back into our lives. He had been Mark's old friend, living out of state for years, until work brought him back. Mark, being generous, offered him a place to stay until he settled. The day Aaron walked into our house, I noticed everything at once: his tall build, the way his voice carried confidence, how he seemed to own every room he stepped into. Unlike Mark's quiet presence, Aaron had a charm that drew people in without effort. And when his eyes landed on me, it felt like he saw past everything I tried to hide. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. He was just Mark's guest, and my job was to be welcoming. I cooked dinner, set an extra plate, made small talk. But the laughter came too easily, the glances lasted too long, and deep down I knew I wasn't stopping it. One evening, Mark had to work late, leaving Aaron and me alone. I busied myself with chores, folding laundry just to have something to do. He appeared in the doorway, leaning casually, his smile carrying unspoken words. "You never stop, do you?" he teased. I laughed lightly, brushing my hair from my face. "Someone has to keep things together." He stepped closer, picking up a dish towel to help without me asking. When his hand brushed mine, it was brief, accidental, yet the spark that shot through me left me breathless. I pulled back quickly, startled not by him but by myself. He noticed. Later, we sat in the living room waiting for Mark to return. Conversation flowed easily. Aaron told stories about places he had traveled, his voice warm and alive with humor. I laughed in a way I hadn't in months, realizing how much I had missed feeling seen, admired, and wanted. When I stood to grab a glass of water, I passed close to him. He shifted just slightly, enough that my body brushed against his. It was the lightest touch, but it felt like fire under my skin. My lips pressed together, holding back everything that stirred inside me. When I glanced at Aaron, his expression gave nothing away, yet his eyes lingered on me longer than they should have. That night, lying beside Mark, I stared at the ceiling with my heart still unsteady. Nothing had happened, but it felt as though everything had shifted. There was a line between Aaron and me that I knew I had no right to cross, but deep down, I was already standing too close to it. I told myself it was harmless, just tension born from loneliness, just a spark that would fade if I ignored it. Still, as I closed my eyes, I kept replaying that look, that touch, that moment when the air between us had felt charged. For the first time in years, I didn't fall asleep thinking of my husband. Instead, I wondered why Aaron made me feel so awake inside. The next morning, I tried to shake the thoughts away. I buried myself in routine, making breakfast, checking emails, anything to erase the memory of how close he had felt the night before. Mark left early for work, rushing out with a quick kiss on my cheek, his mind already far from me. Watching him go, a pang of guilt tightened in my chest. What would he think if he knew what was stirring inside me? Minutes later, Aaron came into the kitchen. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, his hair damp from the shower, and he carried himself like someone who had never needed to try hard for attention. I hated that I noticed. He leaned against the counter, studying me as I moved around the kitchen. "Rough night?" he asked, his tone low and knowing. I froze for a second before forcing a smile. "I'm fine, just couldn't sleep," but he didn't look convinced. His gaze held steady, as though he could see the truth I was desperate to hide. I broke eye contact quickly, handing him a cup of coffee just to occupy my hands. The day drifted along in small moments. Aaron offered to help around the house, and though I declined at first, I eventually gave in. He fixed a leaky faucet, carried groceries, and did the things Mark was often too busy to notice. They were simple acts, yet the way he moved, confident, easy, always with that grin that dared me to look away, made the air between us heavier. By evening, Mark was packing for an overnight business trip. He kissed me goodbye quickly, thanked Aaron for staying around to help, and was gone before I could fully process the reality: I'd be spending the night alone in the house with him. That night, when I glanced at Aaron, his expression was unreadable, but his gaze lingered. Later, lying beside Mark, I stared at the ceiling, my heart racing. Nothing had truly happened, yet everything felt different. I knew there was a line between Aaron and me, one I had no right to cross, but inside I was already too close to it. I told myself it was nothing, just loneliness, just a flicker that would fade. Still, I replayed the look in his eyes, the touch of his hand, the charged moment in the kitchen. For the first time in years, I didn't fall asleep thinking of my husband. I fell asleep wondering why Aaron made me feel so alive. The next morning, I tried to smother those thoughts with routine. I made breakfast, checked emails, moved quickly around the house. Mark left early for work, kissing my cheek in a rush before heading out, his mind already on the day ahead. A wave of guilt pressed against me, if only he knew what was happening inside me. Aaron appeared a few minutes later, his shirt wrinkled, hair still damp from the shower. He leaned against the counter casually, watching me move around the kitchen like I was putting on a show. "Rough night?" he asked, his tone low and knowing. I forced a smile. "I'm fine, just couldn't sleep." He didn't look convinced. His eyes lingered, sharp and steady, as if he could see through me. I broke the moment by handing him a cup of coffee, desperate to keep my hands busy. The rest of the day passed in fragments. Aaron offered to help, and though I resisted at first, I gave in. He fixed a leaky faucet, carried groceries inside, and did small things around the house that Mark had been too busy to notice. None of it should have meant anything, but the way he did them, with confidence, ease, and a smile that dared me to look away, made the space between us feel heavier. By evening, Mark was packing for an overnight trip. He kissed me goodbye quickly, thanked Aaron for staying around, and was gone before I could process the fact that I would be spending the night alone with him. I told myself I'd keep my distance. After dinner, I busied myself with cleaning, determined to escape to bed early. But Aaron lingered at the table, pouring another glass of wine, his eyes following me as if he knew I wouldn't really leave. "Sit with me a while," he said softly. "No need to rush off. It's just us tonight." The words carried more weight than they should have. My pulse quickened as I sat down across from him, telling myself it was harmless, just conversation. But conversations have a way of breaking down walls. At first, it was light, stories about his travels, jokes about the things he and Mark had done when they were younger. Then it turned quieter. He asked about me, what I loved, what I missed, what I dreamed of. Questions my husband hadn't asked in years. Being seen that way made me feel raw, almost exposed. "You're not what I expected," Aaron said finally, his eyes fixed on mine. "What did you expect?" I whispered. "Someone quieter, smaller. But you're more alive than you let on." His gaze dipped briefly to my lips before meeting my eyes again. Heat rushed through me, and I bit my lip without even realizing it. The room felt too small, the silence too heavy. I should have laughed, excused myself, broken the spell. Instead, I stayed, caught in the pull of his presence. When his hand reached across the table, brushing lightly against mine, the touch jolted me like a spark. I should have pulled away. But I didn't. Our fingers lingered in that fragile space of almost holding on. Guilt washed over me, but still I stayed in it. "Mark," I thought, my chest tightening. My husband worked himself to exhaustion, believing he was giving me everything I needed. Yet here I was, letting myself betray him in silence. "Aaron," I whispered, pulling my hand back. He didn't push, didn't press. He just leaned back in his chair, watching me with an unreadable expression, half amusement and half something darker. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said quietly. The truth was, I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of myself, of the things I wanted but couldn't admit out loud. The rest of the evening blurred. We ended up side by side on the couch, watching a movie neither of us paid attention to, sitting far too close for it to mean nothing. Our shoulders brushed now and then, and every time it happened, I told myself it was nothing. I wasn't crossing any lines. Yet deep down, I knew I was already standing at the edge of them. When I finally excused myself for bed, my voice trembled with restraint. Behind my bedroom door, I leaned against it, heart pounding, body still buzzing from what had almost happened. I had managed to hold the line, but as I lay awake, I couldn't ignore the truth, I hadn't pushed him away. Not really. The thought of how close I had come both terrified and thrilled me. The following evening, the house felt too quiet without Mark. His absence echoed through every room, and though I tried filling the silence with music and chores, nothing dulled the awareness of Aaron's presence under the same roof. I promised myself I would keep busy, avoid him, and stay distant. But somehow, the pull toward him was stronger than my resolve. When I stepped into the living room, Aaron was stretched across the sofa, relaxed as though he belonged there. He looked up when I entered, his eyes catching mine, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was heavy. "You seem restless," he finally said, his calm voice carrying something unspoken. I forced a laugh, folding my arms across my chest. "Maybe I am. I'm not used to the house being this quiet." He shifted, patting the cushion beside him. "Sit. No point being alone." It sounded like a harmless offer, but the way his eyes lingered on me made it anything but. My feet hesitated before I gave in, my body betraying what my mind begged me to resist. I sat down, leaving a cautious space between us. But the distance meant nothing. The tension was already alive, pressing in on both of us. The television played, but I couldn't tell you a single scene. All I noticed was the heat radiating from him, the occasional brush of his arm against mine, the way our breathing seemed to fall into rhythm when the silence grew thick. At one point, he shifted and rested his arm casually on the back of the couch, close enough that his skin grazed my shoulder. My pulse thundered in my ears. I could have leaned away, ended it all right then. But I didn't. Instead, I sat frozen, biting my lip against the tremor of anticipation rushing through me. "You're tense," he murmured, his voice low, his words brushing close against me. I swallowed hard. "Maybe I should go to bed." "Maybe," he said, leaning closer, his eyes locked on mine. "But I don't think you want to." The words stole the breath from my chest. When I turned toward him, every line I had drawn in my head disappeared. His face was inches from mine, his presence overwhelming, his size and strength a reminder of how easily he could take what I hadn't dared to ask for. And still, I didn't move. He leaned closer, testing me, giving me one last chance to pull away. I didn't. My lip caught between my teeth, trembling with the weight of silence. I bit down harder, a nervous gesture that betrayed the storm inside me. And then, as though my silence was all the permission he needed, the space between us disappeared. The first touch came unexpectedly, soft and hesitant, his fingers brushing lightly against mine, his breath warm against my cheek. My body betrayed me instantly, leaning into the heat, into the hunger I had buried for so long. Guilt struck sharp and fast, but it wasn't strong enough to stop me. It wasn't enough to make me push him away. When Liam's lips finally met mine, the world seemed to tilt. Every voice inside screamed that it was wrong, that No's trust was splintering with every stolen second. But the pull was stronger than reason, the desire too consuming to resist. I clung to Liam as though I had been waiting for him, as though I had been starving for years and only now remembered what it meant to feel alive. Time unraveled, moments stretching into something reckless, dangerous, impossible to contain. The living room blurred into shadows and heat, the line between right and wrong swallowed by the pounding of my heartbeat. And then, as quickly as it began, silence fell again. We sat breathing hard, both of us aware that nothing could undo what had just happened. My hands trembled as I stared at them, my lips still sore from the bite I'd given them moments before. Liam's voice broke the quiet, low and almost fragile. "You didn't stop me." The truth hung heavy between us. No, I hadn't. I could have pulled away, ended it before it began, but I didn't. That truth terrified me more than anything. I stood suddenly, the weight of what we'd done pressing down like 1,000 stones. "I need to sleep," I whispered, though I knew sleep would never come easily again. I shut myself in my room, pressing my back against the door, my chest rising in uneven bursts. I felt both alive and ruined, exhilarated and broken. A line had been crossed, one that could never be redrawn. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling the way I had on so many nights before, but this time the silence screamed at me. No's face filled my mind, his trust, his love, his absence that had left room for this betrayal. And yet, beneath the crushing guilt, something else lingered, dangerous, undeniable, impossible to erase. For the first time, I realized I could never go back to who I was before. No matter how carefully I pretended, no matter how deeply I tried to bury it, a part of me had already surrendered to Liam. Nothing would ever erase the memory of the moment I bit my lip, and chose not to push him away. This story explores the fragile line between loyalty and temptation, showing how one stolen moment can change everything. The narrator, torn between the comfort of her marriage and the burning pull of forbidden desire, gives in to Liam despite knowing the weight of her husband knows trust. What begins as a fleeting touch grows into an act of passion that leaves her exhilarated yet crushed by guilt. In the aftermath, she realizes a truth she cannot escape. No matter how hard she tries to pretend, something within her has shifted forever. The memory of not stopping Liam, of choosing silence over resistance, becomes the mark of a betrayal that cannot be erased. She lies awake with No's love on her mind, yet with Liam's kiss still burning on her lips, caught between two worlds that will never be the same again. The conclusion is clear. Infidelity isn't always planned, but once the line is crossed, there is no way back to who she was before. The act may be hidden, but the scars of the choice will remain, shaping her future in ways she cannot yet predict. Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. The aim is to explore themes of relationships, trust, and choices. It should not be taken as advice, nor does it promote or encourage infidelity. Thank you for following this story until the end. It reminds us how fragile trust can be and how one moment of weakness can change a relationship forever. Betrayal doesn't always happen with grand decisions. It can begin with a look, a touch, a silence where there should have been resistance. We hope this story gave you something to think about choices, loyalty, and the consequences that come with crossing the line. Always remember, some mistakes can be hidden, but they can never truly be undone. Stay connected with us for more emotional and thought-provoking infidelity stories. Your support means everything, and we look forward to sharing more with you soon. Always remember to subscribe to this channel and support us, so we can keep bringing you back-to-back stories that will leave you hooked.